When one hears the term female icon, they usually think of some of the greatest female characters to be created. Wonder Woman, Sarah Connor, Ellen Ripley, but no one, and I mean no one, embodies that term like Princess Leia Organa Solo Skywalker. I know, that's a long name. Get used to it, say it 5 times fast. In all of Star Wars lore, that probably has more surnames than Anakin has committed war crimes. Hey everyone, this is King Orange, standing in for Deb Ponick while he recovers from surgery. Deb Ponick has wanted to do a lore video on a Star Wars character for a while, and talk about his thoughts on the universe. However, I will be using the Pancras Noseworks format from the Do or Don't series, including his sarcasm and tone of voice. This writing is for this script is all Deb Ponick. With that being said, I will be comparing and contrasting Leia's appearances in both Legends and canon, and determining if the canon sources are accurate in getting the fundamentals of Leia's character correct. Despite the massive problems with the sequel trilogy, I will only be covering the events in canon that lead up to The Force Awakens. The Legends material will take up much of the bulk of the post-Imperial period, but I want to make sure that canon gets its fair due. And to be clear, I am not going to be covering every single thing that Leia does in the post-Imperial period, because we'd be here until Christmas 2099. I'm only covering specific events. With all that out of the way, allow me to tell you the story of one of cinema's greatest feminist icons. Leia was born in 19 BBY. For those of you who don't understand that, BBY basically means years before the Battle of Yavin, because that was the year everything changed. She was born as the twin daughter to Padme Amidala and Anakin Skywalker. Can I just say right here, being born to a former Naboo queen in the Chosen One gets you more than enough street cred. Plus, by extension, Luke and Leia would technically be considered Naboo royalty. Leia was adopted by Senator Bail Organa and his wife because due to present circumstances at the time of Revenge of the Sith storyline, well, let's just say the Jedi had a small problem that resulted in quite possibly the biggest blow to the reputation and organization since the Jedi Civil War. Basically, Luke and Leia were split up to avoid attracting the attention of the Sith. Bail would adopt Leia, while Luke would live with his aunt and uncle on Tatooine, sending the Chosen One's kid to a place full of sand, which of course is rough and irritating. That's the greatest idea ever, guys. While this is technically the canon timeline and comes from the Kenobi series, I think there are 2 scenes that highlight the strength of the young actress portraying a younger Leia, as well as highlighting her character. One of them is when she roasts her cousin when she calls C-3PO and R2 lower life forms, which, with the benefit of hindsight, there is no way that kid would get away with insulting 3PO and R2 in the same room. The other is the multiple times where she makes Obi-Wan, of all people, freeze in place because of how much she reminds him of Anakin. Plus, she outclasses him in the sass department, even at the age of 10. Leia would take her first official trip to Coruscant at the age of 16 to attend the official party at the Imperial Palace. After seeing the Emperor for the first time and his royal corpse face being an absolute creep towards her, not to mention that he remarked, "You have your father's fire," when Vader was standing right there. I don't know if that's meant to be ironic or funky wonky on the writer's part, but it's pretty hilarious. This moment right here, I argue, is Leia's first awakening to the Force. It could also be argued that this might be a passive insight, and the dark side aura that Palpatine naturally emitted caused Leia to realize the true extent of his evilness. But regardless, Leia dedicated herself to undermining and in some cases openly defying Imperial policies, specifically those of the anti-alien variety. One time, Leia traveled to Kashyyyk because by the time her father was openly speaking out against the Empire, and her Royal Highness was basically a hostage, she tells the garrison leader, "You're a piece of shit, and the only reason I'm here is to keep my father quiet." Believe it or not, this is where she encounters Galen Marek, and basically says to him, "Hey, if you're a Jedi as you claim to be, why don't you do something about this guy who's turning Wookiees into rugs? Don't you just love her?" Now we cut to Star Wars Rebels, which right off the bat, I have to give credit to the actress voicing Leia. She captures Carrie very well. Not to mention, she looks very good as far as the animation goes. Say what you want about the animation style of Rebels, but the character models and expressions are very well done, and they clearly understand Leia as a character. Leia arrives to Lothal with 3 Hammerhead cruisers, helps the Ghost Crew by pretending to be kidnapped, has a heart-to-heart with Ezra, and assists with getting Hammerheads free from the gravity locks. Cue action sequence of Kanan cutting down AT-ATs, and Leia dissing the loyal Imperial commander for his incompetence. Cut to episode 4, and she's captured and proceeds to give Vader sass that in any other case would have gotten her killed. This woman literally said to Darth motherfucking Vader, "Hey, go stick your lightsaber where Tatooine's sun don't shine." And Vader quite literally had no response beyond stating the plans were transmitted to her ship by Rebel spies. Side note, rest in peace James Earl Jones. No one does charismatic evil villains quite like you did. Even though David Prowse was the actual original voice, Jones will forever be Darth Vader. Leia would continue to defy the Imperials at every turn, notably resisting a mind probe during the interrogation, to which even Vader of all people complimented. She also blatantly told Grand Moff Tarkin, "Fuck you, you're more likely the worst Imperial of the bunch," not including Palpatine himself. Unfortunately, this defiance led Tarkin deciding, "Hey, let's test the full destructive power of the Death Star on Alderaan." As he says himself, Tatooine is too remote to be an effective demonstration. Little did he know this event would have massive consequences for years to come and would effectively spark massive resistance across the galaxy and galvanize more people to side with the rebels. Yeah, it's probably good he died on the Death Star, otherwise Palpatine would have a few words to say to him. Most of the story you know by this point. Farm Boy travels with Space Wizard, Walking Carpet and Harrison Ford, rescues the princess, more like she rescues herself. They travel to Yavin, Farm Boy blows up the Death Star, the day is won. Yippee! Well, you may not know that not long after the first movie, Luke and Leia traveled to Mimban at the behest of the spirit of Obi-Wan Kenobi and fought against Vader. Unfortunately, Leia was knocked out early in the fight, but that didn't stop her from putting up some resistance. No, I don't mean that kind of resistance, get your head out of the gutter. Cut to Empire Strikes Back, and despite the fact that she can only barely tolerate Han and his insistence that she has feelings for him, she rightly points out that he's a natural leader. But Han pushes his luck. Side note, it's heavily implied that based on how the rebels walking past them act, Han and Leia arguing is nothing new. Fantastic piece of dialogue at the expense of the walking carpet. Classic. Oh, and for shits and giggles, Dead Phonic is also gonna include this edit a bit. Han goes off on his own looking for Luke, who is stuck in the middle of Canada, because let's be honest, on a good day, Hoth is basically Canada during winter. That was Dead Phonic's joke, not mine. Despite the fact that Leia does not like Han because of the bad boy Monteith, she is clearly worried about him and Luke. Eventually, Rogue 2 group finds them and brings them back. Luke takes a bath complete with weird-looking diaper, and this leads to 2 big moments. One of them, infamous! You know what comes next. Important thing to note at this point, Luke didn't know that Luke was her brother, and she was likely kissing him to make Han jealous. In fact, she was kissing Luke to make Han jealous. Suddenly, the Empire is knocking on their door, and they aren't delivering pizza. While Luke was out toppling walking robot camels, Leia ends up on a Slav ship to Bespin, because the warranty of the Falcon hyperdrive expired. Cue Leia contributing to fixing the ship, having a snog with Han and 3PO ruining the moment by cock-blocking the audience. Though granted, given this is a PG movie, that was probably for the best. Say what you want about how 3PO is a great character, but the fact is he is one of the greatest cock-blockers in cinematic history, and no one, not even Anthony Daniels, can contradict that. This eventually ends up at Bespin. Lando puts the moves on her, she's not impressed. One thing leads to another, they are captured by Vader thanks to Boba Fett trailing them after they outsmarted Captain Needa. Cue the carbon freezing chamber, Han says Chewie has to take care of Leia, he and Leia kiss, she says I love you, he says I know, one of the greatest romantic moments in cinematic history is born. Then Han gets turned into a wall ornament. In case you haven't figured it out, Empire Strikes Back is literally the movie where the heroes do not pass go, do not collect 200 credits, and go directly to jail. They try to save Han from Boba Fett and fail and have to fight their way back to the Falcon.
Just open the door, you stupid
R2 smokes out the stormtroopers while everyone plays laser tag, and they manage to escape. Meanwhile, Luke fights Vader, gets his hand chopped out, and Vader says, "Oops, Obi-Wan didn't tell you, I'm your daddy." Luke takes a trip on the happy slide, lands balls first on the antenna, no wonder he didn't have kids, and tries to call Leia for help. Remember when I brought up Leia's awakening to the Force near the beginning of this long-ass video? This is the moment where she opens herself up to the Force for the first time and senses Luke. Note what track is playing here. It's not the Imperial March, it's not the heroic track from A New Hope, it's Leia's theme. They go back to Cloud City, rescue Luke, but oopsie, someone turned off the hyperdrive. R2 confirms that the hyperdrive, despite actually being fixed when they got to Bespin, was deactivated by the Imperials.
R2-D2, you know better than to trust a strange computer. Ouch! Pay attention to what you're doing!
R2 Ex Machina turns on, and the hyperspace works, and then the heroes escape. Cut finally to Return of the Jedi. Leia, disguised as a bounty hunter named Bosch, hands Chewie over to Jabba the Hutt. During the night, she sneaks back into the palace, frees Han from carbonite, and thus we are introduced to the moment where every 12-year-old began to realize, hey, women are actually quite attractive. Slave Leia. Keep in mind that Leia, despite being in a compromising state, does not let this moment come to define her, despite what the internet will tell you. In fact, when Han, Luke, and Chewie are about to be thrown into the Sarlacc, Leia uses this moment to strangle her oppressor with the very chain she is being oppressed with. Luke did not kill Jabba the Hutt, contrary to popular belief. Leia did. Cut to the mission to Endor. After a 1-2 oopsie-doo by Han, Luke and Leia chase after the speeder bike. Leia gets knocked from her speeder and meets Wicket, a cute, cuddly teddy bear pointing his stick at her. Despite the initial mistrust, she realizes his worth as a being and gains his trust enough for him to take her back to his village. Cut to the rest of the gang minus 3PO being put on spits to be cooked because they mistook 3PO as a god for some strange reason. Return of the Jedi is a fucking weird movie sometimes, man. Leia and the gang manage to convince the teddy bears not to eat them and actually gain their help. They concoct a plan to break into the control bunker. The plan goes swimmingly, except the Imperials anticipated the attack and were aware that the Strike Force has infiltrated the orbital defenses. Good job, Palpy. 3PO lowers in some of the Imperial troops close enough for the Ewoks to Care Bear attack them. Then all hell breaks loose. Chicken walkers go into the forest, gets hijacked by Chewie, and Han and Leia are trying to break into the bunker again. Unfortunately, Leia gets shot, which marks one of the few times a stormtrooper actually hits their target. Congratulations, trooper number 6432. You've won all expensive blaster bolt to the face. Q, reverse, I love you. After the death of Emperor Palpatine, and the Death Star 2 electric boogaloo going boom, say that 5 times fast, Leia has her heart-to-heart with Han, smooches him, the Empire's defeated, the day is won, cue the dance party with the Ewoks. Yippee! Now it's time for the post-Imperial period. Leia would go on to help found the New Republic, and this was also around the time she would be visited by the spirit of her father. She really did not appreciate this, citing the terrible crimes he had committed, namely, torturing her. Later down the line, she discovered via her grandmother's diary that Anakin was not always a monster, and eventually was able to forgive him. Luke, unfortunately, got the short end of that stick. R2 revealed most of those recordings he had kept, including the one showing Anakin strangling Padme. And before anyone says anything, no, it's not a plot hole that R2's memory wasn't erased, because unlike 3PO, R2 could be trusted to keep a secret, even if it was almost 30 years. R2 is many things, but a snitch is not one of them. Several years later, she was involved with dealing with Thrawn and played an important role in the fight against the reborn Emperor. Despite the fact she believed that Luke was lost to the dark side, she was drawn by old corpse face via Jet Holocron. When Palpatine monologued about possessing her unborn child, she said, "No thank you," stole the holocron, and fled. Luke told Leia that his position as Palpatine's apprentice was a ruse, and he was working to try to sabotage his power base from the inside. Unfortunately, Palpatine broke Luke's mind and made him a full-on servant to the dark side. From said holocron, Leia studied from the holocron and learned a prophecy from one of the gatekeepers, Bodo Bass. the descendant of Vodosiaskvas. Palpatine gives the Alliance an ultimatum. Return his holocron and surrender Leia to him. He even offers to discuss a truce with the Alliance leadership if they agree to his terms. Despite Han being Han, Leia goes. The material sightings, she doesn't want to use any mind tricks on her husband. She simply goes. When she arrives, Leia's insight senses, quote, an oppression unlike anything she's felt before. To quote the comic directly, there was no glimmer of hope on the ship, only the dark side of the Force more powerful than ever. Leia openly defies the Emperor, stating that she came to save Luke and nothing else, and thus brother and sister are pitted against each other. Leia confides in Luke that from the future, Luke will train all of her children the ways of the Force. Leia had done the unthinkable, like Luke did to Vader. Leia was able to break Palpatine's dark side hold on him, use of a power known as Force Harmony. Palpatine, the perpetual man-child that he is, doesn't take this well. He cites that Luke could have become far greater than even Vader by simply submitting to the power of the dark side. Cue fight that lasts a total of 4 comic panels, which is believed to be within the span of roughly 5 minutes. Thanks to the amp from Leia, Luke manages to hold his own and cut off Palpatine's arm. The panel showing Palpatine's reaction to this fucking hilarious. Palpatine summons a massive Force storm to try to wipe out the remaining New Republic fleet. But Luke and Leia combine their powers like the Wonder Twins, yes, I just made that reference, and cut off Palpatine's connection to the Force Storm, which not only destroys the Eclipse, but also Palpatine himself for the second time. But even though Palpatine was down, he wasn't out. If you think somehow Palpatine returned was bad, wait until you get a load of this. Palpatine came back for a third time, much more powerful but still diabolical as ever, and still the same cackling corpse-faced villain we all know and love. Leia's abilities extended to become more powerful than ever thanks to her study from the holocron. Meanwhile, Palpatine conferences the amount of ancient Sith spirits on Korriban, who tell him that the salvation he seeks from his decaying body lies within Leia's child. Leia becomes aware of this and uses the new power she learned to protect her son and deny the Emperor his prize. The crew flees to Onderon with Palpatine hot on their heels. Palpatine pulls a classic Thanos move. Fine, I'll do it myself. He manages to trick a local into leading him to Leia. Luke and his party realize the terrible danger and rush to protect Anakin. Disclaimer, Anakin Solo, not Anakin Skywalker. But after Han callously guns down Palpatine's final body, he attempts to possess Anakin. Thankfully, the Jedi Brand intervenes and sacrifices himself so Palpatine's spirit is finally destroyed. Okay, enough of the legend stuff because that takes up a massive part of this video. Let's run through the canon stuff. Not long after marrying Han, and after their honeymoon was cut short by Imperials, Leia was sent on a diplomatic mission to Naboo. The Queen accepted in aiding to reform the Senate under the New Republic. Cue Operation Cinder. If you play Battlefront in 2017, you know where this goes. Leia devises a plan to effectively fry all Imperial tech, attacking Theed by detonating a massive ion pulse, a contingency devised by the previous Queen of Naboo just in case the droid army ever sought to come back and try to take over again. With assistance from recent defectors Iden Versio and Del Meeko, they managed to detonate the pulse, thus crippling Imperial forces on Naboo. Side note, the actress that voiced Leia in this mission is damn good. Much like the younger actress, she captures Carrie's presence very well. In all of the missions in 2017's BF2, this is one of, if not the best mission. Sometime later, after the attack on Naboo, if you can even call it that, Leia tried to get in touch with Han to no success, so she called up Infernal Squad to assist in locating Han. Han would go on to assist with the liberation of Kashyyyk, which would reunite husband and wife. Several months later, Leia gives birth to Ben Solo. Much down to the timeline, around the time of Ahsoka was tracking down rumors of Thrawn, Leia came in clutch for Hera Syndulla at her court-martial due to her disobeying and performing a recon mission to Cedos. Leia sent 3PO to represent her at her trial, and who presented proof that she personally authorized the mission. This was complete horseshit, but it showed that Leia was willing to cut corners to cover for her friends and allies. especially when it was clear there were some Imperial sympathizers operating in the New Republic government, something that a certain senator was willing to ignore. Senator asshole. For this final section, I wanted to talk about what makes Leia so special from both a narrative side and a gameplay side, specifically in classic BF2 and 2017's BF2, as well as cover some of the few weaknesses she has. For lore positives, as mentioned, she is one of a very select few that gave Vader sass and wasn't immediately choked to death. She's also a natural leader, giving military briefings easily and leading troops into battle many times. She also inherited both sides of her parents. She has Anakin's passion and confidence, and from her mother's side she inherited her desire to do good and her political skills, not to mention her impeccable fashion sense. Aside from the Slave Leia outfit, most if not all of Leia's outfits were top of the line and very Naboo and Alderaan within their aesthetic. For a meta perspective, Leia gave rise to Sarah Connor, Samantha Carter, Ellen Ripley, and many other badass woman characters. Not to mention, an entire generation of children, not just girls, looked up to her as a hero. And you know, you are a badass when you have an entire track named after you. As for gameplay, on the classic side, Leia comes equipped with a strong blaster, a couple of thermal detonators, and the second most broken ability in the game, invulnerability. The only problem is, unless you're playing Hero Assault, Leia can only be played on the Tantive 4, Polis Massa, and Naboo. Theed if you're playing during the Galactic Civil War. As far as 2017 BF2 goes, she acts as the opposite to Palpatine, mainly as a support character. Her Defender pistol has a charge-up mode that can do quite a lot of damage, and when powered by certain boost cards, she has the ability to one-shot most infantry. Her mainline abilities are the ability to throw 3 thermal detonators similar to her classic counterpart, whip out a rapid-fire E11 that shreds infantry, and deploy a shield that can heal herself and her allies. She also completely counters Boba Fett and can tear lightsaber users a new one if she catches them off guard. As for lore negatives, Leia really only has 2. Get on her bad side and she will not hesitate to roast you, and I don't mean with a lightsaber. And considering most of her enemies are either Imperials or Remnant Imperials, she usually has a field day. The other, more notable weakness is related to her heritage. One of the negative traits she inherited from Anakin is she can be arrogant at times. If you know Episode 4 like Dead Ponic does, you'll know that she tries to take charge of the situation with mixed results. She also comes across as a little bit whiny in Episode 4, but that's a taste thing rather than any fault on Carrie's part. Another thing related to her heritage is often described as either daughter of Vader. Many enemies and sometimes even fellow politicians have used this against her, but she has always found a way to bounce back from it when it does come to bite her in from behind. As for gameplay negatives related specifically to new BF2, she gets countered a lot in close quarters, particularly by the Emperor and most lightsaber wielders, namely Dad, Devil, helmet on, helmet off, and she also does very poor against Bossk. Bossk has a grenade launcher that can rip through her shield, and his diagnostic grenade can lock her down pretty easily. You'll also find that a mode dominated by lightsaber wielders, she sticks out and can often be focused down, regardless if you have your team backing you up. That's another thing. She puts the battlefield in Battlefield General, meaning she is best played in Galactic Assault or Supremacy, where you can take advantage of her ability to support the troops. One more weakness related to gameplay before wrap-up, before her revamp, her thermal detonators used to be flash grenades. I miss those days because while the thermal dents are good, they only cause damage. Flash grenades had utility. Yes, they could be spammed, but this was countered by a long cooldown, 20 seconds as I recall before the revamp. And this is the very long rant about the Lady Badass. Thank you for listening, and may the Force be with you.
Up, half-witted, scruffy-looking herder.
Who's scruffy looking?